So this is, I think, my third sketch pad over the course of time I've been doing the show. And the first one I ever had, there was a sort of postcard-sized picture of Eleanor Roosevelt, and people were always craning their necks to see it. So I'm not very comfortable about this, but I've got a blown-up, full-size picture of Eleanor Roosevelt so that we can discuss her looks. Bear with me. So, Eleanor Roosevelt, for those who don't know, was the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States. And people were very mean about her in the press at the time. She was not considered to be First Lady material about the face. But she had the confidence to laugh it off, and I'd argue that that came from a number of places. Number one, she was married to the President of the United States. That's gotta help. Someone came up to me last night and pointed out she was also the first cousin of the President of the United States. She was born into a certain level of privilege. She came from an intellectual wealthy family. So coming from the intelligentsia, the things that her peers rated in her were primarily her brains over her looks, and by all accounts she was a very smart cookie. She was a very accomplished and awesome lady. Also, she came from an intellectual wealthy family. That's gotta help. A few times I've seen up close the confidence that money can buy, and it's fascinating stuff. Don't let the Radio 4 accent confuse you. Grew up near nice schools and living out of charity shops. But she... one time I was at an award ceremony for campaigners because I was nominated for something. And didn't win. Bastards. And they had various campaigners of note handing out each award. They weren't people who you would necessarily know their names or their faces, but when you heard about the thing they'd done, you were like, oh, I signed that petition. I went on that march. I read about it in The Guardian and approved of it thoroughly. Let's not pretend we always do all the things. No one was more qualified than them to be there, but each one of them, when it came to giving out the award, they shuffled awkwardly with their note cards. They didn't really look up. Each of them said stuff like, oh God, when they asked me to speak, I said, oh Jesus, what's an old fart like me got to say? I mean, you guys, you're the future. This won't go on for too long, don't worry, you can get back to the bar soon. And they all kind of apologised for being there. All except one. One of the people handing out an award that day was Tory peer Zach Goldsmith. And I have never seen anyone look more at home at the podium. He stared everyone straight in the eye, an almost creepy amount. He had fuck all to say, but good God did he sell it. And that's some of the confidence that a paid-for education can perhaps buy you. Also, I once accidentally dated a rich boy from Chelsea. I did not know he was a rich boy from Chelsea when I met him at a friend's wedding in Aberystwyth. Aberystwyth represents. But at the time, so over the uni summer holidays, we were both back in London at our parents' houses in dramatically different parts of London. And I was round at his parents' house once, and they had this sculpture of an elephant that was about this high off the floor. And it had a big crystal on its back, and these kind of weird spindly legs. And when I saw it, I went, oh, that looks kind of Dali-esque. And he looked at me like I was stupid and said, that's a Dali. Now, it's not that I didn't recognise the style, I totally called it, but I did not believe any human would have anything worth that much money in their living room. But he didn't see the cost barrier making me unsure. He just was like, you clearly don't really know. I totally called it, it wasn't. Anyway. And one time me and Chelsea boy, as I'll call him, were wandering aimlessly around central London, and this way, we've gone to a pub there, we'd wandered for a bit, or is there a pub here? No, there isn't, we're lost, no, wait, blah. And it became time to go home, and I went, oh shit, I don't actually know how to get back from here. And he looked at me like I was stupid, and hailed a black cab. Now, it's not that I'm a Londoner who doesn't know that black cabs exist, but they're bloody expensive. I think pretty much the only times I've been in a black cab is either when I'm outside of London and they don't cost a crazy amount, or when the last night buses have gone and you've got 4 friends or more to split the cost with. But he had no cost barrier. He didn't see my cost barrier. All he saw was a 20-something Londoner who didn't know the easy way home. Entitlement is a learned behaviour. If you're middle class, you've been trained to ask for more, for better, for attuned to you. Don't you have it in blue? I'd like to speak to the manager. Why are you stopping me, officer? To adapt your environment to your needs. It's not exactly greed. It's just you know you could have more. Nicer things, more gold rings, so why not ask for it? Because all the worlds of video game are men and women merely multiplayers. And one man in his time could play many parts on Easymode. Because if you're straight or white or moneyed or male or able-bodied, you could be playing life on Easymode. Other players will have levels of difficulty that you perhaps will never see unless you listen to the other players' parts. Because on the difficulty of this setting, a broke down car won't break the bank. A late night walk home won't have monsters lurking. This game will have more loot drops and more lives. Other players might rage quit at stages that you breezed through, and you might roll your eyes and wonder why. Some people, eh? But even though the scenery looks the same, some players are playing a very different game. These different difficulties aren't in one spectrum, they're more like facets. There's race, there's class, there's age, there's gender, there's mental health, there's whether people think you're hot or not, your gender could be cis or trans. Please understand there's not just one difficulty, there's an array of power-up mushrooms and banana skins. And if you're lucky enough to have been born with booster rockets, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, it doesn't mean you don't deserve nice things, but it means you could be playing life on Easymode. If police have only ever been polite to you, if you have the connections to breeze right through, if a pregnancy won't stop your education, if some weed won't mean incarceration, if your boss is a shit and you can quit confident you could find better, then you could be playing life on Easymode. But some player ones will never find their player two. Some players never complete the level called school. Some players are told their stats are in their looks, but they can never look like they should. Some players are invisible in public places. Some players are scared to go in public places. Some players are stalked by security in every shop. Some players are scuppered by student loan turtle shells. And if none of these examples rings a bell, that's how you tell. You could be playing life on Easymode. Some players start life with better kit mods, eaten cheat codes, and it isn't fair, current cabinet, to look down on those struggling to scrape by and say that those players have just been wasting their time, not getting to the bonus levels, not running the government, not filling the media with people who think and look like them. Some players haven't been doing any of that. They've been busy just surviving. In some difficulty settings, that's a full-time quest. So, about a week before I went up to the Edinburgh Fringe, I had a living room strewn with acrylic paints and brightly coloured paper and scraps of everything, and my housemate walked in and went, "Hannah's detonated a fucking art bomb in the living room." Occasionally, I wonder if this particular piece was worth it. This incredibly scientific graph, I would argue that the advantages and disadvantages aren't sort of set and separate to you. You are permeable to them. And I would argue that disadvantages and advantages over the course of your life can stack up one way or the other. And it goes right back to early childhood. I would argue that we are socialised differently based on gender, or perceived gender, I should say. So let's go with if we take two childhood phrases that you've heard far too much when you were young, let's go with, in the blue corner, the phrase, boys will be boys. And in the pink corner, let's go with, that's not ladylike. Now they have something in common, they're both sexist bullshit that you hear when you're a kid. But the difference is that boys will be boys says, do what you want because you're male. But you can't possibly control you because you're male. Carry on exactly as you were because you're male. Whereas that's not ladylike says you can't do that because you're female. And there's a thing called learned helplessness, which is where if you've had enough knocks, you stop believing you can do things. And it can happen really quickly or over a very long period of time. They've done studies where they gave people maths tests. And the whole class had the same maths test except for the top 2 questions, which were either piss easy or very, very difficult, and the rest were the same, at about medium, let's say. The people who had the 2 really easy questions did better than average on the rest of the test because they just had a confidence boost. The people who'd had the difficult questions at the top did worse on average because they just had their confidence knocked and they didn't think they were smart enough for this test. It's going to be too difficult, maybe I'm a fraud all along. And I'd argue that women are often given more things to be worried about in their lives. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this one, but for the longest time I thought I wouldn't be able to be a real performer until I dropped at least 2 dress sizes. And as soon as I'd said it out loud, I knew it was bullshit. I mean, on the list of reasons your doctor will give you to lose weight, so that you're a human being worth listening to is not usually on there. But for the longest time it wasn't out loud. It was just kind of niggling at the back of my head, telling me I wasn't good enough and I wasn't allowed because of reasons. I had a conversation recently when I'd finally worked out what the thought was, I had a conversation with a male performer who's probably exactly as chubby as I am, who just kind of blinked at me and said, that's not something I'd ever even thought about. This next piece is called Pressure, for reasons that will become clear.